Hi, friends. I think that I actually found the worst Christmas movie ever made. I'm not even sugarcoating this. It's terrible. I haven't decided what the thumbnail and title is going to be for this video, but whatever I decide on, it's not clickbait. The title alone intrigued me because I read A Karate Christmas Miracle, and I thought, wow, this should be a wholesome and fun Christmas movie to make fun of. And let's just say we should never take things at face value. Okay, we have a lot to unpack here, and I really don't think any of you are ready for this. I'm not exaggerating. Before we get into A Karate Christmas Miracle, we need a little bit of context about the man responsible for this movie, Ken Del Vecchio.
I'm Kenneth Del Vecchio, otherwise known as Judge Kenny D, KD Extra Muscle, Muscular Kenneth Del Vecchio Esquire.
This video is not about Ken Del Vecchio, and all of this, of course, is just my observations, but I promise all of this is very much related to my review of this movie. Ken is probably the most unique movie producer that I've come across on the internet, and he gives off the vibe that he is very pleased with himself. I have a feeling that he would agree with both of those statements. According to this filmmaking reel on what I'm assuming is his Vimeo page, he is an acclaimed filmmaker, film festival chairman, best-selling author, former judge, trial attorney, and TV legal analyst, which is just so impressive. Some of the clips of this man are just very telling.
When I say that I'm looking good, I'm looking good! You know what I mean?
They just really make you use your imagination, you know what I mean? I found the Vimeo account on this Wix website for what I'm guessing is his production company, and it features this very deep and mysterious photo of him. I wonder what he's thinking about. Probably karate. According to Ballotopedia, he also ran for Congress, and then he made a documentary about himself running for Congress. He claims that he was the first Congress candidate to endorse Donald J. Trump, and I think you could tell where this is going. Yeah, I think that he clearly doesn't take himself too seriously, so I'm hoping that he's a good sport about my video. His Wikipedia page lists all of his movies, and they range from very right-wing sounding examples, like this apparent anti-Obama movie where he plays a college student who makes a deal with the devil to become the president in exchange for millions of souls. Ooh. I'm going to steal your souls.
I'm going to steal your soul.
I'm seeing one called Blue Lives Matter. I think there's a pro-life movie somewhere. Don't love that. He also made a movie about a lesbian couple where one of them pretends to be a man in order to get married, which I guess makes him pro-lesbian. Okay, that sounds excellent in theory. The point is, he seems to love political statements in his movies as a way to express his beliefs, and he likes to push the envelope a little bit. And this karate-themed Christmas movie is no exception to that. So get ready, everyone. This movie is about Jesse, who has this 12 days of Christmas task list that is apparently going to bring back his missing dad. The first task his mom finds him doing is listing the last 10 presidents.
Donald Trump, Barack Obama, George W. Bush.
Really quick, Dad is conveniently played by Ken Del Vecchio, and Jesse is played by his son. Dad's name is also Bob, which I found hilarious for some reason. You know, he really does kind of look like a Bob. There are various oversized frame photos of Bob that we'll consistently see throughout this movie. We're gonna get into the details about how Bob went missing later, because I can't even begin to describe to you how wildly offensive I found that plot point to be. So we're just gonna have to take this movie one step at a time. So getting back to the plot. Jesse, as you can see, is very into karate, which surprisingly feels more like a side plot rather than what this entire movie is about. So why does Jesse think that this task list is going to bring back his dad? Well, last year, apparently Bob told him that if he finishes his list, then he can get whatever he wants for Christmas. One could assume that last year, the list had tasks like do your homework, take out the trash, get really sassy with mom about Richard Nixon for some reason.
Before Richard Nixon.
Richard Nixon was impeached.
No, he wasn't, Mom. He resigned. Hold on. Let me finish my list. Richard Nixon, Lyndon.
Do you think he's trying to be a black belt in karate? The kid who plays Jesse, by the way, I'm sure has many amazing talents. Acting, not one of them. I really don't hold it against the kid at all, and because he's a kid, I'm gonna go very, very easy on him. Like at a baseline, at least he memorized his lines, you know what I'm saying? He always seems either uninterested or like he's about to start laughing.
He's not gone. He's just not here. I know that if I do everything on my list, he'll come back.
With this segment, Dad, I just want to go play Fortnite with my friends. So we cut over to karate practice, and Mom is on a work call. And her working too much will become an important plot element later, which is very confusing to me because we barely see her at work, but okay, whatever. We see that Jesse has to earn his black belt by himself, and he has to do it by Christmas, which is in like 5 days.
I have to earn my black belt on my own, and I have to do it by Christmas Day. What?
And teaching yourself?
Yep, read my list.
Please just get used to not having answers for anything. I googled the average length to earn a black belt in karate, and it was something like 5 years. But I'm sure Jesse could pull it off. Just look at him. He's really a natural. Then abruptly, and I mean, I was really caught off guard. We get this really violent transition into some dude talking to a girl who looks like she forgot to take her vitamins. I assumed this was a trailer for a different movie because the dialogue was super out of place and nothing they were saying made any sense. All right, so remember earlier when I said that I found the details of Bob's disappearance to be very offensive? Luckily, I can spare most of the details because it barely has anything to do with the story. Apparently, Bob was at the theater when this event took place, and he was kidnapped by bad people. The details of what went down sound eerily similar to a Joker-related incident that happened at a theater in 2012. I did not find this detail funny. I found it to be gross and disgusting. I denounce it, and it serves no purpose in the plot, so I'm not gonna make any jokes about it. And don't worry, because none of this will make any sense later. So all that weird-looking footage that we saw just turned out to be Jesse dreaming. He is just tossing and turning. You can tell he's obviously having a nightmare, especially based on how terrified he sounds.
I had a terrible nightmare. There's this scary man on a screen. Then there was a clown with a gun.
Give him a hug, Mom. He's obviously scared. Mom puts him back to bed and finds what is supposed to be a newspaper, like the one that we saw in the flashback. And I say supposed to because it looks like it was printed out at the local Staples. I don't know who they think they're fooling, but they're not fooling me. We cut over to what is apparently a law school, and this professor, her name is Elizabeth, is going to be really important to the story, and her character is kind of insane.
I have something for you little critters. Well, I can't call you critters, right? That ain't one of them forbidden words or something.
For 3 straight minutes, which sounds short, but I promise you it's not, 3 minutes, this lady is going on a tangent about some hypothetical scenario about whether Santa is guilty of aggravated assault or not.
Hey, little reindeer, y'all are out celebrating with your boss. You're in a bar. Dude with beer, Santa. And Santa's had a whole lot of beer to drink tonight. Now, all of a sudden, you are Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It just explodes because you have a tequila shot there, and all of a sudden a big old brawl ensues, and everybody's... Santa just broke a chair right over some greasers.
The students are stumped because they're a bunch of fucking idiots. But we get a very Good Will Hunting-esque type of moment where Jesse walks in the room out of nowhere and is like, actually, Santa was not guilty. Because Jesse is just so smart. It turns out that Abby set up an appointment to speak with Elizabeth, which is why her son rolled into the classroom. Right off the bat, Abby acts strangely confrontational. She starts calling her out for guessing things correctly about her son's name and the fact that Bob is an attorney.
How did you know that my husband is a lawyer? How did you know my son's name? Good guess.
Abby starts accusing her of being a psychic. And as a viewer, I am confused because I'm like, is being psychic not allowed in Karate Christmas Town? It turns out that Abby knows who Elizabeth is because she went to a psychic convention when she was a teenager. And Elizabeth told her her future, which included a detail about her future husband going on a journey. Elizabeth?
It creeped me out so much that I didn't want to do it anymore. So I paid my way through law school by doing all those stupid little psychic fairs that you...
She starts freaking out. She starts completely spiraling out. Being a psychic is something that Elizabeth has left in the past. I guess she helped with crime scenes and stuff and finding dead bodies, but she keeps repeating that she did not find that fun.
And I don't want to see a bunch of dead bodies. Ugh, I don't want to see dead bodies. I really think it's time for you to leave. It's really not a fun thing to see. It's like a terminal disease, okay? It's not a fun thing.
She did not like seeing dead bodies, okay? Elizabeth has clearly no intention of helping Abby find her missing husband, but Abby refuses to take no for an answer. Just like the lecture, this conversation becomes way too dragged out than it needs to be. And Elizabeth even repeats her lines several times.
I'm just kind of known as the wacky professor around here, okay? Just known as that little wacky law professor here. I don't do that anymore. It's not a fun thing.
Like, can we just get to the point, please? I have things to do. Abby leaves her business card and a pocket knife that Bob apparently had when he went missing. Later that night, Mom brings home some pizza because she's a very busy woman, and Jesse demands her to paint a birdhouse because it is apparently on his task list, and he's too busy doing karate to do it himself.
It's on the list. It's all about karate now and, getting my black belt.
I call bullshit on that, Jesse, because I saw your list, and there was no mention of painting birdhouses on there. We see things like clean every room in the house, name 25 people from the Bible, make chocolate chip cookies, name all the books from the Old Testament, but no birdhouses. So, Jesse, I think you just f***ing hate your mom. I'd karate kick him right to his room. No Pokemon for 3 weeks. But oh no, Jesse is suffering yet another night of nightmares. Just look at him rolling around, yelling, "Dad!
Dad! Dad!
Dad!" The flashback introduces that Bob was doing some kind of presentation about exercising your right to some bear arms, which is very noble of him. Really quick, I just want to point out that this movie really wants us to make sure that we know that Bob, and Bob specifically, is just the most amazing person ever. This kind of thing is about 80% of the movie. Also, the movie doesn't do a very good job explaining why he was talking about this in the first place. At first glance, it looks like he's at some kind of trial, but it's in a movie theater. Bob is wearing a suit, these guys are in suits, I'm still confused, I don't know. Later they say it's a birthday party or a presentation, it really doesn't matter. Jesse is quite obviously trying not to laugh here.
He's alive. I need to get that black belt.
I don't want you to get hurt.
Mom, I'm tough.
Mom, I'm big and strong because I know karate. It reminds me of SpongeBob.
But why didn't you tell me Dad was at the theater trying to make a constitutional argument about guns?
I need everyone to think for a minute. Okay, he's like, what, 10? Do we think that Jesse would actually say something like this? This detail, of course, is not relevant to the plot at all. The next scene has Mom on a work call or something. She works in marketing. That's as much as I know. She's arguing about gravy. I think she's selling Christmas meal catering kits or something.
So you have gravy. A whole chicken, you put gravy on it. It's not just women in the kitchen anymore.
She contacts Sarah, her old friend from high school, to be Jesse's babysitter because she's just working late all the time.
I work late a lot, but ever since his father went missing, I
remember your husband, Bob. He was a really cool guy.
Yeah, Bob was really a cool guy. I love everything about Bob. She's going on a tangent about how even when Bob was around, she was working all the time. Bob, of course, was always doing fun things with Jesse, and she was always absent. But not Bob. Other than that, nothing important in this interaction happens except that I'm supposed to be disappointed in Abby for working and that I should just love Bob. Meanwhile, Jesse is really expediting his black belt journey because he is already at blue belt after what, 2 days?
Mom, I'm tough.
At work, Abby is working really hard trying to upsell this applesauce.
applesauce is amazing these days. It's the new Jell-O.
Who could argue with a sales pitch like that? Then she says something about marketing applesauce with jalapenos.
Of course. I can market applesauce with jalapenos.
When she sees a call from Bob. The plot thickens. But no, it's not Bob. It turns out to be someone named Jay who found his phone and tells her to meet him at what looks like to be a place that feeds homeless people. She shows up and we are introduced to this extremely hostile and insane gentleman.
Are you Jay?
Do I look like Jay?
Do I look like...
I don't know. Maybe.
J's a letter of the alphabet, and I don't think I look like a letter. It's also a bird, as in Blue Jay, and I'm not blue. Huh? Are you trying to call me blue? How would you like it if I called you W? Huh?
I don't know, guys. I found this character to be rude and mean for no reason. You know what I mean? I came across the actor's YouTube channel because he posted this scene on YouTube, so it just like came up my search history. His name is Joe. This YouTube channel features a few videos that I found quite entertaining. Like this one of Joe putting underwear on his head with seemingly no context. I was laughing at this for 20 minutes. I don't really know what this has to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, I get it now, because he's using the underwear as a mask. Okay, so after this tangent about the alphabet and Blue Jays and whatever, he just goes, just kidding, Jay's in the back. Jay comes out, and Jay, unlike Sam, acts very non-confrontational and very normal, which I found to be interesting.
I'm Jay, and I apologize for Sam's sense of humor.
So why is Bob's phone at this homeless people's kitchen? Well, according to Jay, Bob used to do free legal work for them, and that he was so generous with his time.
How did you know Bob?
Bob used to do free legal work for us. He was so generous with his time. He used to stop by every now and again and serve food if we had nothing else for him to do.
Abby never needs the phone for anything, and this information does not help her find Bob. We as an audience just need to understand how selfless Bob is. But back at home, we get a bit more perspective from Jesse, and he's doubling down that his mom works all the time, but that Bob was always around. Sarah asks Jesse to explain how karate belts work. Jesse goes on this long tangent that doesn't really matter, but he says that the white belt symbolizes the birth of a seed, and then he cuts to what I initially thought was an animation of ovaries.
Or birth of a seed.
But to my surprise, it was just a bunch of birds flying. I think ovaries would have been funnier. This karate tangent adds nothing to the plot, so I'm not really gonna cover it. It just takes a long time for him to stop talking. Suddenly, Abby gets a call from Elizabeth, our wacky psychic professor, asking her to meet up at the karate dojo.
Just known as that little wacky law professor here.
Elizabeth brought the pocket knife from earlier and has a realization that Bob didn't use the knife in self-defense when he was being kidnapped. Well, apparently he didn't use the knife at all because the knife was in his pocket the whole time. Stay with me because I'm about to tell you one of this movie's many unnecessary plot twists involving Bob. You see, Bob had a knife because right before he went to the theater, he was teaching women how to defend themselves at the karate dojo.
Using this knife to defend himself in that theater, he was using it here to teach women how to defend themselves.
That is why the plot brought these two women here at this location, so that we learn that Bob feeds homeless people, that he spends more time with Jesse than his terrible wife, and that he teaches women how to defend themselves against bare arms. Not only that, we just had to make it just a little bit better. We discovered that Bob was a black belt in karate.
Hey, Abby, your husband was a black belt. What?
No further explanation. We just have to assume that Bob is out there whooping ass. I was hoping for some footage of Bob doing karate, but we never get that. We just have to use our imagination. And I feel cheated. We get yet another vague flashback of some kind of like theater event. I don't know. I don't know if it's present or the future. I don't know. It's really irrelevant. Randomly, that guy from Karate Kid and Cobra Kai is in this movie, and he's talking about
Elan, I'm Graham Palace, owner of the Palace Jewel. This is the crown jewel in our empire, and the place we end up spending.
I don't know, he's like just mumbling about something, but he apparently owns the theater with the clown people, and he's gifting the theater to his daughter, who is named Aurora. Nothing more to say about that. Then there's a collection of really creepy looking people telling Jesse that he needs to stop talking until Christmas. This theater scene was, of course, another nightmare that Jesse has. Jesse wakes up and tells his mom about how Karate Kid dude gifted his theater to the daughter, and that this is somehow connected to Bob giving Jesse a gift for Christmas. I don't know. Then he says, "Mom, I'm not speaking until Christmas." And then he starts doing sit-ups while clearly trying not to laugh. Also, I feel like the Jesse kid just got tired of learning lines, and I don't really blame him because learning lines is difficult. Abby and Elizabeth are getting wasted at the local bar, and Abby is getting guilted for working a lot or something.
Look, you are a very successful businesswoman, and you're a pretty average mother.
She was just too busy selling her applesauce.
It's the new Jell-O.
Not only that, the movie wants us to know how privileged she is because she had rich parents and had a pony or something.
You went to private school. You also had a pony, and you went to Yale, and your parents paid for absolutely everything. And a new car every 2 years? Whoop-de-doo! And the crowd goes wild.
Elizabeth goes on a tangent about how Bob had to work for everything.
Robert, he had to work for every single thing he has. He had to pay his own way through law school just like me.
Which really drives the narrative that Bob is amazing and Abby is a selfish asshole. Does this have anything to do with the plot? No. Abby comes home wasted from the bar and just feels really guilty about being a terrible wife. And I want to lightly use the term wasted. I personally was not convinced that any alcohol was consumed here at all.
Go to that stupid crummy horror film and give us a speech.
Then the movie takes a huge 180 when we see Karate Kid dude get a phone call from Jesse. I thought Jesse wasn't supposed to be talking for the rest of the movie, but okay, sure. Not even gonna question about how he got this man's number, because at this point, does it really matter? This shot looks very out of place because it's the camera work is really, really good, and the lighting is also pretty good with the water effect. It's telling us that he's in front of a pool, maybe he's at a resort or something. I have no evidence to back this up, but it wouldn't surprise me if Martin Kove sent this footage to make sure that anything with him in it looked good. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe the crew just magically knew how to shoot and light a scene with some really good audio, but only in that scene. Anyways, this conversation leaves me with even more questions that I'm not going to have answers to.
Streamline. James Whitmore was the security officer at my school. He was also the security officer at your movie theater.
That's simple.
No, it's not simple. I need to defeat Whitmore. But how?
Do you remember how I taught you to fight?
I don't expect any of you to understand what's going on because I still don't, making this video right now, because I truly mean it when I say that new plot elements are just violently introduced in this movie, and they're always so vaguely out of place. They serve no purpose to what's going on. Jesse keeps referring to the Aurora girl, saying that he has some kind of bond with this girl that we barely see, but he doesn't elaborate. And then apparently Karate Kid dude has been telepathically training him on karate this entire time. And then this entire interaction turned out to be just a dream. You see what I mean? Nothing makes sense. Abby shows up at work with another massive framed picture of Bob. Whoever was in charge of the cinematography really went for a more handheld feel in the scene, and it made me very nervous. Her boss comes in and tells her that she has a meeting about applesauce that she has to go to.
So, today, all applesauce, right?
I told you it's the new Jell-O.
Don't mix up your applesauces.
Elizabeth comes in and makes sure to compliment this wonderful picture of Bob.
Ooh, nice picture of your hubby.
Abby is like, sorry, dude, I'm working and we're not drinking buddies.
We're not drinking buddies now.
But the reason that she visited Abby, which I found to be obvious, given the circumstances, is that she had another vision. Abby, however, decides that her meeting about applesauce is more important and that she feels like Elizabeth's visions don't prove that he's still alive, which felt wildly out of place. I don't know. And then Elizabeth doubles down and says, no, actually, Abby, I saw your husband. But now Abby is suddenly skeptical. She insinuates that Jesse's dreams don't mean anything and that Bob is gone forever. It just feels so out of character considering she's the one who tracked down this lady to begin with. You know what I mean? Then she backpedals a little bit and she's like, okay, maybe you really are onto something, but I have to get to this meeting because it's about applesauce and it's really important. So Abby, for some reason, is having a hard time finding the meeting room, and Elizabeth is following her, trying to convince her to leave or something. Like, it's like really urgent. Elizabeth drops some new lore that in her vision, she saw her fiance die and left him in hopes that he would live. And that's the real reason that she didn't want to be a psychic anymore. I assume the reason that she said this is to get Abby to believe how serious she was about her abilities to, find Bob and stuff. This interaction right here is probably the only good acting in the entire movie.
Have you talked to anybody about this before? I love him so much. And I gave him up. I figured if I gave him up, didn't marry him, then he won't die. You really want to give up your husband for some stupid bonus? I know what you mean. And that's not fair.
And I found it to be purely accidental based on how the rest of the movie is. Now, that being said, this conversation introduces some extremely random plot element that tries to hint at Elizabeth being the ghost of Christmas present, past, and future, or whatever. I don't know. It makes no sense. Like, what's the Christmas movie about Scrooge? The whole point of all of this was to get her to leave her job before a crucial meeting about applesauce, because Elizabeth has something very important to show her, and it needs to be shown now. It cannot wait. So, what was so important, everyone? What was so urgent that made it necessary for Abby to leave her job without telling anybody? Elizabeth had a vision that Bob was checking out this nativity scene and looking at a Christmas tree and hanging out at this gazebo. Abby tries to probe her with more questions, like, did you see him yesterday? Did you see him a few weeks ago? She mentions that Bob was there a day before his disappearance and that he was going to tell Abby all about it, but that Abby was too busy working late that day. So this is just Abby learning once again how awful of a wife and mother she is.
You should have made the time, Abby. Bob always made the time, didn't he?
But wait, it gets better. Abby finds a plaque that tells us that Bob built the gazebo. That's it. Abby had to leave her very important workday involving applesauce so that we can know that Bob is a selfless man who generously built a gazebo next to the nativity scene with Jesus Christ, and that Abby is a low-life piece of shit who is busy working all the time, and Bob couldn't even tell her about it. Even in the car, Elizabeth is just dogpiling so much guilt on this woman for needing to get back to work.
No, I'm cold and she doesn't care. She just wants to get back to the office.
Let's do some reflecting. Does any of this information help us find Bob? Specifically, the details about his noble presentation about bear arms, the details about him teaching women how to fight, how he's a black belt, and how he's the great and powerful Bob who built a gazebo. No, my friends, it most certainly doesn't. These plot elements exist purely for us to really love Bob. You might be thinking, what does this all have to do with karate? Don't worry, everyone, because Jesse is still very much training. Just look at him beat the shit out of this couch. Ooh, I'm trembling. Meanwhile, Abby is painting this birdhouse at her son's demand with what looks like wall paint. She makes sure to point out that Bob would have done a better job.
Definitely not how Bob would have done it, but...
I'm not exaggerating any of this. This is actually in the movie. Abby goes back to work and gets grilled by her boss for not showing to her applesauce presentation.
What is that? It's awful.
He's really mad at her for leaving without saying anything, but Abby learns an important lesson that seeing Bob's accomplishments that do not point to his whereabouts are much more important at all times of the day. This doesn't really go anywhere. We don't find out what happens to her job because the movie just abruptly cuts to Jesse at practice.
Have you ever felt like you missed something? Like life?
Who I think has a black belt. Maybe it's brown. I couldn't really tell. It doesn't really matter. Abby is now super motivated to find Bob, so she walks into Elizabeth's Zoom lecture, which turns out to be a lecture she's giving to the indigenous people of North Sentinel Island. You know, one of the only indigenous tribes in the world that have no contact with modern civilization. Any questions that you're having right now about this are the same exact ones that I have now. I guess the joke here is that it's funny because foreign people from other cultures are hilarious. They even sprinkle in a little voiceover, which is clearly someone speaking gibberish, but it's reversed.
Plans. Sorry.
I don't even know what to say about that, everyone. We don't even have to ask what the context is, like how this Zoom lecture was set up in the first place. Like, is she doing it via drone? But every other detail in this movie also has no explanation, so does it really matter? Elizabeth starts getting these visions that by this point in the movie should be putting the puzzle pieces together, but they don't. They are still very out of place. It just leaves me with more questions. Bob looks like he's in the Matrix. There's also a shot of Bob talking to Aurora, but she's in the hospital and there's no context. Still confused, but all of this weird vagueness should lead up to something, right? Right? Abby and Elizabeth go out for some drinks again, and Elizabeth runs into her ex-fiance, who is alive. This is kind of an uncomfortable interaction because he's sitting with his wife and she's spiraling out of control. But while she's putting him on the spot and making a scene, we as an audience know that she's very conflicted because apparently she's a psychic, but she also had no idea that he was alive. So that kind of makes her psychic abilities very unreliable, and she unloads this freak out on Abby. Suddenly they see this gentleman who I guess kind of resembles Bob walking into a restroom, but it turns out to be someone else. And then Elizabeth comes to the realization that her visions only existed because Bob would have wanted her to know all of his wonderful accomplishments. Yeah, so this signals to Abby that Bob will always be missing and that he's not coming back. But if she just lives her life the way that Bob did, then she too will be a good person. The movie cuts to Christmas. Jesse is about to break the last board he needs to break before he gets his black belt. He breaks the board and, surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise! Bob walks in and says that he escaped. That's it. I truly mean that. There is no further explanation about how the theater incident is truly relevant to anything. No explanation on who actually kidnapped him. No explanation on how he escaped or how the magic of karate brought Bob back. I fully expected this buildup of Jesse earning all these belts, the karate dude telepathically training him, and Bob being a black belt would result in some kind of elaborate fight scene, especially with Jesse fighting all the bad guys to save the great and powerful Bob. But I'll be honest, I feel like this was a total cop-out. It's like they just gave up. The ending tells me that Bob would have come back regardless. Elizabeth's investigation did nothing to help bring Bob back. This ridiculously long plot point of Elizabeth dragging Abby to all of these places purely existed to paint Bob as the most amazing man to ever exist. That's it. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like using the Aurora incident was kind of gross, really gross. I don't see any context as to how that would be okay. It didn't have to, you could still have the bad guys. You could still have the weirdos or some kind of cult kidnapping him. We didn't need to use this incident for this purpose. But yeah, that was quite an interesting movie. So what did y'all think? This was the first non-2000s movie that I've ever covered, so if you want to see more weird movies like this one, just let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.